the other side of the world, to Uganda, to Eddie Mukaaya. Eddie Mukaaya, who was the founder of and executive director of Hear His Voice in Uganda. He is a member also of the steering committee of CIICA. In the picture, you see him with his daughter in Geneva at WHO, and he was also using the World Report already in Uganda. So I pass the word to Eddie, and I really look forward to how you are using the World Report in Uganda. It's up to you, Eddie. I hope the Wi-Fi is stable in Uganda at the moment.
Thank you, Leo, and good evening, everyone. Thank you, Beatrice. That has been very powerful. Like Leo said, I'm a co-founder of Hear His Voice Uganda, and I thought I would use this opportunity to tell us a little bit about what we do. This was birthed out of our own experience, things that we did not get. Between my wife and another family, we started an organization that is standing on three major pillars. And when we talk about hearing loss in Uganda, it's different without talking about families, because it's the families who do the diagnosis. It's not the audiologists or the ENT doctors. So we are so biased on children because in Uganda, hearing loss among adults seems to be more acceptable and tolerable than it is the case with children. And with infant hearing loss, there are so many gaping gaps that happens. And not until a mother realizes my child is not talking, my child is not responding to this, that is when diagnosis takes place. So we are strong on emphasizing family and parent support so that they can also, previous speakers have talked about the issue of stigma. We have to help the families raise up to the challenge. We are left with one option, not to cave in the pressure of stigma, but to rise up and challenge the status quo so that we are the mouthpieces of our children who don't have speech or who don't have language. We also talk about early intervention as another pillar, which is critical in early intervention and rehabilitation, which is critical in making a success story of using either hearing aids or cochlear implants. But we can't do that without research and advocacy. We don't have a lot of data available. And for us to come out with policies, even without a budget, you need to show data, you need to show numbers for you to make any headways. So we are strong on research and advocacy so that we can augment our support and our work towards this. Next slide, please. Yes, and when this was thrown to me again, Sue, I kept going around. I'm like, this is a very huge document. What does this mean for Uganda? What does the World Report on Hearing mean for Uganda? One thing that came to mind, in Africa, we are full of music, is a musical instrument, which is a harp. And a harp has many strings. So for us to gain the most out of this report, we shall have to play a number of strings to make it effective in our community. And this evening, I just want to share only 4 of those strings. Next slide, please. And my first string here is hearing and screening. And I said it is a timely intervention. I summarized the 4, coming from what Paige shared earlier about the integrated people-centered ear and hearing care approach, which is highlighted in the World Report, with emphasis to ear and hearing care included in the national health plans. And it also summarizes so well with the acronym of hearing. But when we look at hearing and screening in Uganda, what are we looking at? I've already talked about how diagnosis takes place at home, not in a hospital. And it is taking place when a child is 3 or 4 years old. It is coming later on in age. It's no longer early intervention. All we have to look at is now, how do we timely intervene in this situation? So with the absence of a national policy on ear and hearing care, and with the absence of newborn screening, which hinders early intervention, what do we have to do? We have pioneered a study of screening. How do we integrate screening into what people are used to? When a child is born, they are taken back for immunization. How can we include screening into the immunization schedule so that as a child is brought back on a routine basis, on a monthly basis or quarterly basis, to get an immunization vaccine, then can we now place screening as part of the things that we need to check on this card? We are also working so hard with other partners. We have worked well with both the teaching universities in medical schools and the Rotary clubs to see that we can support and equip referral hospitals which are regionally placed, so that once diagnosis is helping, because you're not just going to to jump on a turnpike to go to a hospital nearby, but how can we bring these services where they are? Regional referral hospitals, if they are equipped with screening capability, if they are equipped with diagnosis capability, by the time they are seen, such a person data is collected on a central database so that we can say, okay, who is ready for cochlear implant or who is ready for hearing aid? And again, I'll be sharing later, when you talk about a cochlear implant, it is something that is far out of the reach for many. But how can we intervene to help families leverage? Next slide, please. Access to technology is my other string on the harp. Much as the cost of technology is amplified in many areas, to us, there are so many other gaping needs to fill the spectrum of intervention. Few skilled professionals, you're talking about absence of speech and language pathologists, you're talking about absence of audiologists. We have few ENT surgeons. So when you talk about this, the cost, it is not that. There are so many other underlying factors that are hindering early intervention while using technology. So how do we do this? When you talk about, again, hearing cochlear implants, when you are switched on, there is no audiologist. You're talking about software that is going to be used for mapping. All these become a challenge. But how do we help? We are trying to see how we can use available resources. Sue has talked about, in the absence of a budget, you become creative. How can we use available resources to help us access this technology? We are pioneering a study with a teaching university in the west and part of Uganda to try to see what is the impact of technology, especially those who have used hearing aids before. We have had companies that have come to donate hearing aids and they go back. Charities have come to donate hearing aids and they go back, but we have not fully studied what is the impact of this. So we would like to integrate that and show that, yes, when you intervene for a child who is going to primary 1 or 2 and you give him a hearing aid, after 6 months or so, what is happening with his quality of life in terms of social, academic, and the well-being of all. We are also trying to see how to build local capacity without having indigenous support. Rehabilitation cannot help the technology. So we need to have local support in place, talking about training audiologists, talking about training ENT surgeons to be able to perform these high-end surgeries, talking about speech and language pathologists. You know, a speech and language pathologist graduating from college without knowing how a cochlear implant works, without interpreting an audiogram. But these are the challenges that we have to deal with in order to help our situation locally. So we are trying to work with hospitals as well, so that it's no longer companies which are at the forefront of running this technology. We would like hospitals to put in place cochlear implant programs or hearing aid programs, which are being run by hospitals, not run by companies. Because when this is coming in with companies, the play of competition comes in and you don't get the actual results. But if it is a hospital, it is a doctor who is making the decision, is not going to tie this individual patient on a particular company, but a patient will have a choice to choose. Next slide, please. And lastly, on this is rehabilitation. I've already talked about how late diagnosis happens and late intervention, which brings about timely intervention. With all this low support, professional support, without a cohesion of working between families and the professionals, it becomes hard. So, but at Hear His Voice Uganda, we have worked with different, again, companies to donate to us software so that we don't have the expertise, yes, but we can use teletherapy. I connect a child on my computer and an audiologist from any other part of the world takes over my computer and programs a hearing aid or programs a cochlear implant. And this, for the past 3 years, this has been so successful using teletherapy. I would also like to see that audiologists and teachers of the deaf and speech and language pathologists are brought up to speed, especially as far as listening and spoken language approach is concerned. At the moment, we don't have FVT certified pathologists. And you know very well that without proper listening, the cochlear implant is not going to do the work. So how do we get our professionals to speed to see that listening and spoken language approaches using FVT are integrated in our practice? Next slide, please. Yes, we have seen that I had an opportunity to go to the World Health Organization in 2016. And ever since we came back, we have used, we first used the World Health Report that came out in 2016. And we launched the World Hearing Day publicly for the first time in Uganda. And like Beatrice has said, we went on media, we went viral. We marched in the city of Kampala to bring the awareness, to bring the message home that yes, there is a way out for those children who can use technology to be able to speak and use spoken language and be integrated in mainstream. So out of this, the government caught an idea and embraced the aspect of commemorating World Hearing Day on a yearly basis. And out of this, again, Beatrice mentioned it earlier, we had to work with the government, with different stakeholders to see that we're looking at what is the biggest challenge we have. Of course, the government looks at the prices, looks at the money. He said, okay, how can we make technology available by waiving taxes? So we are very grateful at the moment that right now, out of our advocacy work, there has been a waiver on all hearing devices coming into the country. There is no tax, and this reduces almost 20% of the cost of a hearing aid or the cost of a cochlear implant. We would like to see that more and more of this is happening. But when we do that, we would like to augment it once again with the evidence to show that, yes, the numbers are working when we do this. When we do this, we're able to interpret it and make the work of the many families which are involved in Hear His Voice Uganda being a part of this work. Next, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Eddie Mukaaya, for this excellent presentation. Also, the people, the participants are all loving your presentation, I must say. I see a lot of reactions in the chat. They like your harp. And also, it was very nice to see it's not only a demand of help and to have you ask not only help, but you offer a lot of answers already. You have a lot of answers available, and this is really interesting to see. You are really doing a lot of good work in Uganda. It's of course for the people, especially then in Europe or in Australia, a different world with different questions and you have. And I really look forward to Brian if there are special questions in the chat room now.
Yes, thank you, Leo, and thank you, Eddie. Just to add our admiration to the ones already in the chat box about the amazing advocacy work you've been doing there in Uganda, and it's a kind of model, I think, for how this kind of community advocacy work can actually take place and have a real impact on the government. But a very specific question from Michelle about the point about hospital-driven and not CI company-driven care is so important. But the problem being often that the companies that provide the monitoring and infrastructure, especially in under-resourced countries, and how do you kind of address that balance and make it work in the most optimal way that gets the best out of both, I guess, is the question.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. I am very close and I consult with Cochlear Corporation, and I have worked with Cochlear for the past 4 years, coming to 4 years, to see how do we change the trajectory and bring services home. For example, during COVID, we have patients who need to be implanted. These are children. Again, money, the cost of the implant is high, but people can afford it. If I can afford to drive a car, I can't see my child go without hearing. Money can be looked for, but we don't have implanting surgeons. So by working, when we have implanting surgeons locally, with or without a pandemic, we shall have the implants going on. But because we don't have, we have a travel ban, no implanting surgeon is coming in the country. So by a hospital making sure that we have a cochlear implant program, yes, we work hand in hand with the companies to train local surgeons. Local surgeons can be sponsored to go to the implanting companies, to the implant companies, so that they train the surgeons on the specific ways of how to implant on their device. And this is what Cochlear has done. So we are developing capacity to see how do we support indigenous work so that we become, well, self-reliant. Again, the same goes for audiology. Working with both hospitals and the manufacturers to see that we train audiologists, support audiologists. I know Cochlear has taken audiologists out of here to Dubai for training. They've taken them to the US for training in fellowship. And all this is to see that we are building support locally.
Eddie, thank you for that. Just one other very quick question, because I know we're quite tight on time. But Teresa Quayle asks, how can audiologists who are based in residential schools for the deaf, not in hospitals, also be supported? And she wondered if you had any ideas about how we ensure they have the specialist training and support they need, and gives the example of where that's been working in Rwanda.
Can you please ask that question again? My internet was jumping.
All right, sorry. Basically, how can audiologists who are based in residential schools for the deaf, but not in the hospitals, also be supported?
Yes, we are actually right now working with audiologists who are not, actually hospitals don't hire audiologists right now. National hospitals don't hire speech and language pathologists, don't hire audiologists. That is how the hospital is working. So all the audiologists are freelance. So we are trying to equip them, and again, not only audiologists, but also speech and language pathologists. We have a mentorship partnership with Here and Say, and many of you in the Europe will be familiar with this, and AG Bell, to see that we can mentor our pathologists, speech and language pathologists, into AVT specialized. Then, when it comes to audiologists, we are working a lot with manufacturers of cochlear implants to see that the capacity of audiologists is upped in both hearing aids and cochlear implants. We also have a partnership with the Rotary Club, with one of the Rotary Clubs in here, to see that we have specific training budgets for audiologists. And this is going to be the last one. We have a memorandum of understanding with one university to see how can we review the curriculum for the teachers of the deaf. They have a special needs course, but it is all open. But we want to see how can it be specialized for teachers of the deaf, and also specialized for early childhood development, and specialized for audiology. And this so far is happening, and I'm glad that time will be our test as far as this is concerned.
Eddie, thank you. That was really great. Leo, back to you.
So,
Yeah.
Leo, I'm really sorry. Could I just make one very quick point? Eddie mentioned Cochlear and their training. Can I just say that I think that all the industry, all the companies endeavour to provide training right globally that's needed too. Thank you.
Yes.
That's true. Yeah. Thank you very much, Eddie. We can have a whole day talking with you and with the situation in Uganda and all the work you do. It's really interesting to hear it, and I'm sure that all of us have picked a lot of information out of your presentation.